Okay, so this is my art prize piece in progress. This is about a 5.5-foot cherry log. Off center on its is the axis of rotation. You see here how eccentric that is, and a good 300 pounds or so. But yeah, you can see the vase shape forming, going at around 120 RPMs at this point, and quite a challenge and really exciting, and hopefully it'll turn out as well as it started. You can see here this is pretty well pushed this lathe to its limits. I really don't think I could do anything larger than this diameter weight wise and still be able to pull it off. I think I'd have to add mass, but you can see that at this point pretty much the final form has been established. I got it all sanded down, real nice and smooth. The bark edge here, I spent quite a bit of time getting that thing to stay on, but it's there and looks real good, and the shape of it's actually really neat. See if I can stay steady enough to turn this. Okay, oh, it's locked down, never mind. So we can see that there's this neat V shape in the front. You can also see here at the end I got I made a little flat using the pattern maker's tool rest right down there with a tool in order to make a section that would be flat enough to hold this 8-inch faceplate. This is actually designed for an Atlas lathe, but I'm going to bore some big old holes into it. It's really thick, it's over ½ inch thick, it's about 5/8 thick actually, and go ahead and take some lag screws and bolt that sucker down, and then I'll flip it end for end so that then I can hollow the foot down here. And of course first I'm going to form this tenon, shape it, bring it down a little bit, because that guy is going to be going into this right here, the big shark jaws for the big Vicmark chuck. But yeah, so right now that's where I'm at. And pretty soon I actually am going to, my next step is to do one last sand down to 220, and then if you can see here, you can, I don't know if it shows on the video, there we go, you can see this weird discoloration going on. Well, one of the major features of this piece was to get the very light sapwood in contrast with the heartwood, you know, and then leading up here to the bark rim, so you had this neat wood variation coming up to then this focal point, the rim. And so this discoloration really threw a wrench in things. So I got an idea, and I'll keep my fingers crossed and see if it's going to work. And you saw there that I finished the outside, and what I did from there was I bleached that sapwood, did a couple of bleaching passes, but before I did that I masked off the heartwood by shellacking all of the heartwood first. So that acted as a protective layer so that I could do that bleaching without muddying up that line between heartwood and sapwood. Here's the current setup. I've gotten pretty far, well, not that far since the last video, but I've had a lot of work to do, little things that I've run into, and tool making that I've been undertaking. As you can see, I've started the hollowing process. Getting in there pretty good now. I'm somewhere around 9 inches deep, I believe, at the center. Right here I have switched over from the large boring bar to a D-handled trap system. It's a lot easier to do. There's no point in using the big honking one for the initial hollowing here. In fact, the entire foot's probably going to be done with this setup. And you can see here I've got a 3/4 inch bar with a 3/8 hole in the end holding a 3/8 drill. And this is actually acting as my cutter. This idea is something that I got from Jeff Nickel, another wood turner. He actually has some YouTube videos that show a little more detail about this, but you might be able to see, it'll focus, well, it's having trouble, but it acts as a hook tool. The way it's ground back, you take this drill bit and sweep back one edge, and this flute then comes down in a nice sweeping arc, and that gives you a basic hook tool function. You just plunge it in and pull it out, and it works great. So that's what I've been doing so far. You can be pretty aggressive even at the slow speeds that you'll see that I'll be turning at. So I guess at this point I'll go ahead and flip the thing on and we'll get started. Normally here I'd be standing actually right in front of, well, not quite right in front of the camera, but right in here. And so I'll stand a little bit back into the side, but I'll show you the basic process that I'm doing here for the foot anyway.
As you can see, the entire outside of the vase has been shellacked. Now this is to act as a sealant to make sure that the outside doesn't dry too quickly. This log is definitely not very dry, and all that moisture, if it evaporates super fast, you could get cracks on the outside. So that's why I've sealed it with shellac, and then as you'll see here, I start the hollowing process, continue the hollowing process, and eventually get all the way to the bottom, which is about 4 feet hanging over the tool rest. And once that's done, I actually let that dry. That shellac outer layer helps it dry from the inside so that it'll shrink and pull it smaller without drying and cracking on the outside.
I have finally reached the next stage in the hollowing process. As you can see, I've actually started the main hollowing. I've gotten rid of the arm that was helping it to be held and mounted between centers. So at this point it's pretty much a do or die scenario. Everything's going well. It seems to spin quite steadily. It's interesting because as the weight turns, as the weight comes around, it compresses each wheel at each turn, so it does have a little bit of an unevenness to it, but luckily it's stable enough where hollowing doesn't seem to be an issue whatsoever. So I've gotten the process started, as you see. Extended a good 16 inches over the tool rest as it is here even at the beginning. By the time I get to the bottom, which you can't see in the frame, it'll be about 4 feet extension over the tool rest. At this point I plan on continuing using boring bars. We'll see at some point. I may have to come up with something else, but that's my goal. And right now I'm using the drill bit cutter, as I had mentioned in one of the posts. And I guess I'll turn it on and show you how it's going so far. Okay, hopefully this gives you a better shot where you can really see what's happening at the cutter. Obviously I've progressed more into it now. It's been a few hours of work. Yes, a few hours of work. It's been really tedious getting started here. I actually ran into, well, you can see a couple of knots in the picture right here, but I ran into about 4 pretty good sized knots, and of course those familiar with working in cherry know that the knots in this wood tend to be rock hard. So definitely took me a while to figure out what I needed to do to get through them, but at this point I've made it through those problems. Unfortunately, down about a foot and a half deeper I'm going to be running into more knots, so that could prove quite challenging. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the machine, and we'll hopefully get some good shots of what's happening at the cutter. As you can see, I could take a decent shaving. Right now I'm working, well, I guess I'm working about 20 inches over the tool rest.
And once I completed that rough hollowing, I did let it dry. I think I let it dry for about a week, so still not enough to get it 100% dry. Then I went ahead, finished turning the inside, sanded it, shellacked it, and that was the finished piece. As you can see, it turned out really nice, and I was really excited about it. Well, that's what I have to share today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.